Hey, I just wanted to give you guys an update. We've been gone for a while. Took another motorcycle trip. We had an incredible opportunity. I think there were 5 couples together, all on motorcycles. 7 days. We rode from Buell, Idaho, all the way up to Glacier Monument. We took what do they call it? The Road to the Sun is what I call it, but I think it's different. The Way of the Sun, I don't know. But we went up over the pass in Glacier. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful landscapes to ride through. So awesome. In fact, one of the things my wife loves to do is we get on it. I have a tendency on the bike to listen to rowdier music, but when we go through like Yellowstone, we go through Lobo Pass, we went all the way up into Coeur d'Alene, up at the top, came down through Hell's Canyon, a lot of twisties. And when we go through all that beautiful scenery, my wife just loves to have it. It's incredible. If I can get some video of it, I'll share it with you guys. But we'll be going through these canopies where the trees are over you, waterfalls in the distance, riding beside a lake, and we'll have worship music on the bike, and my wife is on the back. She doesn't like me to do this while I'm driving, but she's on the back. She's got her hands raised up to heaven, and she's praising the Lord while we're going through. And it's super great time of fellowship with friends. And maybe one of these days what we can do is put out word that we're going to take a trip and let you guys know. And if you want to join us, you'd be welcome to join us. We have a great time going up and through. I don't know what we're going to do next year, but we always do at least 7 days. This time was only 1,700 miles, so it wasn't too many bad riding days. I think our longest day was 4 or 5 hours of riding time. But beautiful, beautiful time out in creation and having that great, the Bible talks about koinonia, fellowship with one another, encouraging one another in just life. And it was pretty cool also to just check out of all the crazy COVID stuff going on. Of course, there were masks that we had to have with us to go in. We were in Montana, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And each one has slightly different rules in regard to masks. So we brought masks with us, and we just did life along that road. It was beautiful, awesome scenery, great time, had a blast. Here's another praise. I didn't have to spend one day at Harley-Davidson getting something fixed on my bike. So I can't say that for the 2 previous trips, but this trip, everything worked well. Nobody had any breakdowns. In fact, I'll tell you this: we had one rider go down in Oregon. We're in Ontario, Oregon. We just finished the ride through Hell's Canyon, and we dumped out in Ontario, Oregon, and we're pulling into a Walmart to figure out where the hotel is for that night. And as we're pulling into the Walmart, there's a road, that goes into the area where the mall is or whatever, where Walmart was. And as we're going in, a car come over and pinched some friends of ours, Rick and Kristen, all the way up against the curb, and then actually hit them. The bike and the car collided, but everything was pretty slow. No damage was done, but it knocked the bike over. Nobody was hurt. It was a blessing. We got an opportunity to see the Spirit of God bring self-control to a situation that maybe you don't always have self-control through. And but we had a great time. Everybody had a blast. So appreciate your prayers through that trip, and look forward to sharing the next ones with you guys. Hey, welcome back to the Bearded Biker Bible Man. We're having an opportunity to discuss some of the questions that we've been getting in terms of how to understand or maybe recognize when God is speaking to you. In Acts chapter 2, verse 14, Peter stood up with the 11, lifted up his voice, and said, "Men of Judah and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and give ear to my words. For these people are not drunk as you suppose, since it's the third hour of the day, but this is what was uttered by the prophet Joel. And in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. And the last days, we spoke about it before, but the concept of the last days begins at the resurrection of Christ and ends at the return of Christ. So we find ourselves in the period the Bible would call the last days. In these last days, God declares, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my male servants and my female servants in those days, I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. I will show wonders in the heavens above, signs on the earth below, blood, fire, vapor, smoke. And the prophecy goes on from Joel chapter 2, beginning in verse 28. But as we consider that, I just want to introduce to you a guest we have with us this time. This is Pastor Jason Richardson from Calvary Chapel, Kimberly in Idaho. And he had an experience a few years ago that he's going to relate to you that kind of illustrates, how it is that God can speak to us today. God's not growing the Word of God. He's not delivering to us the things like he did to the apostles, but he is still speaking to the church. And so I just want to take a few moments and hear Jason's story. So here he is.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I guess I probably started off with saying that most people who tell me they have seen God or are dreaming visions are crazy. So unfortunately, I think it's kind of hard to always nail down, is this God or was it bad pizza or, whatever. But for me, I have a time in my life where I felt like the Lord spoke to me. And so usually, at least in the Bible, when we see these, there was usually a dream that happened, and then in real life, God would bring somebody to interpret that dream. In my life, it happened a little bit different, and so I'll tell you the story. I was out duck hunting one morning, and it was pretty early, and we had gone duck hunting that morning with a couple friends, and good times. Had a great hunt. Was back home by like 9 o'clock. Got my ducks clean, and basically, I was going to take a nap. I ate some breakfast, taking a nap. While I was taking a nap, I got a phone call from my father-in-law, and he says, "Hey, did you leave one of your partners down there duck hunting?" And I said, "No, I didn't. But it's probably just another hunter." So he calls me back about 30 minutes later and says, "Hey, I think that guy's in trouble." And me, being the amazing, compassionate man that I am, said, "What does that have to do with me?" And so I just kind of dismissed it again. And the third time he called me, he said, I think he's in trouble, and I need your help. I got the police here and the Swiftwater Rescue. And I'm like, okay, what does that have anything to do with me? Unfortunately, I'm not a Swiftwater Rescue. I'm not a emergency support staff. I'm just an average guy. So anyway, my father-in-law persists enough. I go over there, and when I went over there, it was a very, very weird scenario. There was about 25 cars. There was a bunch of guys from Swiftwater Rescue, Jerome Fire, Buell Fire Department was down there. So there's like 30 guys in this circle. And because I duck hunted so much around there, my father-in-law thought I could help them. And I thought for sure these guys are going to just kind of dismiss me, like, the water's there. That's all I got for you, So we sat there for a little bit, and they started coming up with ideas. And for some reason, they kept asking me what I thought, which I thought was weird. And by the time this was all done, we talked for about 30 minutes, and they couldn't come up with an idea. And they kept looking at me to come up with an idea. They said, "What are we going to do?" And so finally, we're sitting there, and I come up with this idea to link these ropes together. There was a guy that was down in the river had floated down about a mile in the water. It was January, so it was freezing cold, and he had landed on a rock about the size of a trash can lid right above a bunch of really big rapids. And it was just that little tiny rock. Essentially, the water came and was going over the rapids, and that little rock was somehow he hit it and was able to get on top of it. So as we're sitting there, I came up with this idea. I said, let's tie a bunch of ropes together, and we'll go and tie it off to my kayak and tie it off to a tree, and you can kind of lower somebody down to it. So all these swiftwater rescue guys and fire guys, man, that's a great idea. I'm like, okay, sweet, who's gonna do it? And so we sit there for another 15 minutes debating who's gonna do this, and nobody will get in the water. And so finally, an EMT from Buell, I can't remember his name, but he decided he could do it. And I said, okay. And I said, who's gonna lower him down? And nobody wanted to go lower him down because you had to get in the kayak to get to the island to lower him down to where he was at. So nobody wants to go. So I go, well, I'll go help. You know, I know where to go and how to get there. And so we get down there and they give us all these ropes. We have like 15 ropes of various sizes. And we tied all these ropes together, and we get down and we position ourselves right above him, and we tie it off to a tree and we tie it off to the kayak. And I said, all right, hop in, I'll lower you down. And he goes, yeah, I'm not going. I go, you're the swiftwater rescue guy. You're the EMT. You're the guy who's supposed to do this. And he goes, it's too treacherous. I think we need to go back. I said, well, I think this is the only way to get him. And he says, well, you get in. So being the incredibly smart man that I am, I got in. And the idea was that we were going to let out line until it got down to him. And then I was going to give a Comanche yell, you know, give the ay, 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 and he was going to pull me back. So I jump in the boat, I go down to him, it works perfect. One of the crazy things was the rope. We tied like 6 ropes together of various sizes. The distance between the tree we tied off to and the rock that man was on was exactly the distance of the rope and the knots that we tied. So it went right to it. The guy that was standing on that rock jumped in the kayak and he put a big stripe on my forehead with a shotgun as he jumped in the boat. And we jumped in and we swung over to the side. And we learned as we were over there, all the firemen had come along the other side of the river, and they were all there, and they ministered to him, they took him, and we learned a lot. So there was actually 2 guys in the boat that they were in duck hunting when it flipped over. One guy fell in the water, and he had a shotgun with him, and he threw his shotgun in the water, and he swam to the shore. And he followed his buddy down the shoreline all the way to that rock that he stood on. The other guy didn't want to throw away his shotgun. He wanted to keep his shotgun, and he bobbed like a cork all the way to that rock. And so when we get on the other side, this shotgun that this guy had been holding on to for so long, he finally touches dry land, and he just basically throws it in the marsh, and the EMTs and all the firemen take him away, and somebody picks up his gun, and in a matter of 15 seconds they had untied the ropes and everybody was gone, and I'm sitting there alone with my kayak going, how am I gonna get my kayak back to where it's supposed to be? It's a long story, but that night I had a dream. And in my dream, I saw, so it's hard to explain. I wouldn't say I saw a figure of God, but it was a presence. It was like it was like standing in a mist. He was like all around me. And the only way I can explain it is he had a 5-gallon bucket of water, and he didn't, but it was like he poured over the truth of all of the situations that had happened in that day, and he poured it in all over me, and I'm trying to catch all this information that's going by, and the only thing that I could understand was what was left in my hands. And so it seemed like there was much more meanings, but all the pieces kind of were the same. And basically he told me I get to be one of those 2 guys. He says I can be the guy who kept his things, kept his belongings, and was concerned about the cares of this world, and that I would bob down in the chaos of life. I would land on a rock, and Jesus would save me, but it would be as through fire. It would be like from the gates of hell. From God's goodness I was saved, not because I was walking with him, but because God saved me right at the end. The Bible talks about, being saved and, as through the fire. And I always felt like my clothes were going to smell a little bit like smoke. But as he's, telling me this, he says, you can also be this other guy, and you can let go of your belongings. And he says, you can swim to the shore, and you'll be safe. But on the shoreline where we duck hunted, it was nothing but brambles. And that guy who was walking through that path, he was safe from death, and Jesus was right next to him, but he was all cut up from the brambles and walking and trudging through this kind of slough area. And he says, you could be one of those two guys. And the funny part was, as he was trying to explain this to me, he said, what kind of answers does the world have? And that the world was represented by all of those, super smart people, the Swiftwater Rescue, the EMTs. When it came for salvation, when it came for somebody coming and knowing what to do, the world had no answers. And so there was no understanding. There was no time or wisdom that the world could give me to get me safe. There was nothing. And in that story, this is where the parts kind of get blurry. Jesus was the path we walked on when I was the one guy. Jesus was the rock that I stopped on when I was, in my mind, the other guy. Jesus was the path we walked down with the boat. Jesus was the rope. Jesus was the boat. Jesus was all these other things. He was the one delivering me to the other side. And so the people, it was funny, when you got to the other side, both men made it to heaven, or made it to the other side of the river. And it was funny, when the guy got there who was hanging on to all of his stuff, when he got to the other side of the river, when he saw safety, when he saw the glory of heaven, what does he do? He throws his shotgun in the mud because it's worthless. And I don't know why, but the Lord really just kind of put that on my heart. Like, which guy do you want to be? I'm gonna do the work of salvation in you. You're mine, one way or another. But there's an easy way and there's a hard way. And after going through it and seeing that, I decided that I felt like, this wasn't a vision for somebody else, or it wasn't, I'm not worried about, it wasn't something I was supposed to share. It was directly for me of what guy I wanted to be. And it was, like I say, one of the best experiences of my life. And it's one of those things that has been an anchor. It's been something that when, as a Christian, times have gotten hard. I lost a house. I've had financial troubles. I've had, my daughter's had come up with a blood cancer, and just different things in life. And it's funny, it always comes back to that same dream. What guy am I going to be? Am I going to hold on to the things of this world, or am I going to be focused on the next? And so that was just a vision that God had given me, and it's been something that has really changed my life. And people, sometimes even when I say it, I feel a little crazy, sometimes a lot crazy, but it's been one of those things where I know that I talked to the risen Lord. I know I've heard his voice, and it's one of those things for me. It definitely changed my life from that day forward. So when you had that, when you had the dream afterwards, did you have doubts about whether or not that was God? For sure. So in my life, there was a lot of things that God specifically kind of spoke about that had become gods in my life. I obviously I love hunting, and I love fishing, and I had a ski boat, and I love skiing, and all the hobbies of life had kind of become, I think, my God. And so I really felt like and at the time I was in some financial trouble. So I thought what the Lord had really told me was I need to sell all those things. And what the Lord had told me was I need to get rid of them. And so I had tried putting them all on eBay and different places to sell the stuff, and I couldn't sell it. It wouldn't sell. I tried, I dumped the prices to almost nothing, and I literally couldn't sell them. And I was talking to my dad, who at the time was a non-believer, and he basically, we were talking, and I told him about the dream, told him what was going on, And I told him what I felt like God was telling me. And this is a non-believer at the time, mind you. And he just basically said, if I felt like I really, he says, look at your dream. Did God say sell it, or did he say get rid of it? And I said, he told me to get rid of it. And he said, if you really believe that the God of the universe spoke to you, why aren't you doing it? And that hit me pretty hard. I was like, I don't know why. So it was actually a pretty crazy thing. I went home that night. I called a friend of mine and basically told him bring a trailer, and I got rid of boats and quads and shotguns and bows and Sea-Doos and the whole 9 yards. I got rid of it all, and I was really bummed. I felt kind of dumb. I felt like I was at the time I was in a lot of financial crisis, and one of the things that the Lord told me that was there is he told me that it was going to be by his hand that I was going to be saved and not by mine. And so it was funny. All that stuff, I ended up giving it to my buddy. He ended up becoming a missionary and going down to Mexico with it, which ended up being a really cool deal. It was so hilarious. He put all those same things on eBay, and he had them sold. There would be a picture of my boat or a picture of my stuff, and here's my picture, here's his picture, and mine's cheaper, and they would still buy it from him. It was just like comical. So, and he sold it all, I think, or got rid of it all within like 2 to 3 weeks, and was able to start his trip to Mexico. And it was funny. It was soon after that that I entered the ministry, and it was funny. I was about $20,000-$30,000 in debt at the time I started ministry. I don't think I ever made that little of money since I was back in high school, and somehow in 4 years I didn't declare bankruptcy. I felt like the Lord was asking me to walk through this, and somehow, I have no idea how even, he paid back all of my debt, and I was delivered by God's hand. A cool tax thing, a job would come up. I got a gift one time. Me and my wife were arguing about bills, and we're arguing, the phone rings, and she goes, maybe it's God going to pay our bills. And it was. It was crazy, but definitely the Lord used that dream to get me to where he wanted me to be, and it's been an anchor to that. So
that's awesome. I hope that testimony encourages you, and if you have any questions or things, hit us up. The email and address is available for you guys to write any questions. If you want to contact or check out Jason's stuff, Calvary Chapel Kimberly does have a live service on Sundays, so you can check out his teaching and the things God's using him for over there. And we look forward to spending some time together with you again in the future. God bless you guys. Have a great day. Hey, what happened to the guy on the rock?
So while we were, some time had passed, and it was kind of cool. God kind of let me see some cool things that happened with the guy who was on the rock, actually. So I was at the local coffee shop having some coffee with a friend of mine, and there was this little old lady, and she was telling another lady about the story about her grandson who was duck hunting and fell out of this boat and ended up landing on this rock, and how this guy had come and saved him. And so it was funny, because as I was sitting there listening, I'm just sitting there kind of reading the paper, hanging out in the coffee shop, and I'm hearing this story, and it's picking up. I'm remembering all of these things as this lady's telling the story. And as we were sitting there, I finally stopped her and told her that I was that guy who ended up working with the fire department to save her son, or her grandson. And it was really cool, because she said that after that event, after that experience that he had bobbing in the river and being saved by this little tiny rock right above this big rapid, it was funny that she said that he had given his life to Christ. And so as the vision and all the craziness that kind of comes with it, it was kind of cool to see the Lord. Not only did he change the direction of my life, but he also brought that man who was bobbing down the river and landed on that rock, he changed the direction of his life too. So, you know, the end of the story, who knows where all the pieces fit, but the great part about it, I guess, is when the Lord speaks, when the Lord guides, when the Lord moves, his people come, his people respond. And so it was definitely one of those things for me that it was kind of neat to, not only was it a dream that changed my life, but it was a reality that changed his. So cool story.